You're listening to a Monster Kid podcast.
Hi and welcome to A Dingo Ate My Movie, a podcast that features classic Ozploitation and other weird, wonderful, overlooked and underappreciated Australian films from the 70s, 80s and beyond. My name is Pete and I'm your host.
The Night Rider. That is his name. The Night Rider. Remember him when you look at the night sky.
Welcome to A Dingo Ate My Movie, a podcast about the weird and wonderful Australian movies from the 70s, 80s and beyond. I'm your host, Pete, and today I'm joined by Matt Fulton as we leap headfirst into Alvin Purple from 1973 and Alvin Rides Again from 1974. Good morning, Matt. How are you, mate?
Hello, Peter. I'm good. I'm still recovering from my previous experience of houseboat horror.
All right. So, a few quick thoughts, opening thoughts on these two movies. Like, what a strange double this is. And I know I was just looking this morning at a trailer for Melvin, Son of Alvin, and I was like, oh, should we have done that one? And when I looked at the trailer, I was like, no, I don't think so.
The fact that you watched the trailer, I'm not even brave enough especially after watching the second film in this trilogy, I guess you would call it.
Did you know there was also a TV series?
Yes, there is one episode floating around on YouTube.
Yeah, it's amazing. The series, I saw some video of, I'm trying to remember who it was on ABC. It was like on one of those ABC comedy shows or something like that, talking about the episode. All I can remember seeing with the clips of the episode they showed was Alvin Purple in a bath with a woman, and the bath was full of spaghetti.
Oh.
And yeah, it was quite gross.
Oh, what a waste of spaghetti.
He was being pursued by some criminals or something. And I think, if I remember, the main criminal guy was, I've forgotten the actor's name, but he was the boyfriend of the daughter of Ted Bullpitt in Kingswood Country. I'm trying to remember the actor's name now.
Not Lex Marinos.
That's it.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. That's what I think it was, yeah. Well, that's how it looked like to me. Where did you watch it? Just talking about where people can watch these movies.
Broly, which is part of the Umbrella's streaming service, and also on DVD, which is through Umbrella Entertainment.
So we watched it on Netflix.
Oh, wow.
Funnily enough. And but yeah, I've got both the DVDs as well. I watched Alvin Purple on Netflix. I don't think Alvin Rides Again is streaming anywhere. Or is it on Broly? It's not, is it? I had a bit of a look, and I was surprised that the Broly don't have it with Alvin Purple, which is quite odd. If people don't know about Broly, I know I've spoken about it a little bit on the last couple of episodes. It's a streaming service from Umbrella, which is really great if you want to catch up on Australian film and TV shows. They have all sorts of stuff on there. It's a really good streaming service. I've got to stop talking about it because they're not paying me, but I just like it anyway. I like it anyway. And if you're watching a lot of Australian films, it's a great place to watch it. I think it's only available in Australia, right? But a VPN is your best friend if you're living overseas. All right, so we'll start by talking about Alvin Purple. So Alvin Purple is a classic Australian sex comedy that became a cult favourite from the 1970s. Film centres around Alvin Purple, played by Graham Blundell, a young man who's irresistible appeal to women seems more a curse than a blessing indeed. Despite his own indifference towards sex, which sounds weird, Alvin finds himself relentlessly pursued by women, leading to a series of comedic and often awkward encounters. The movie humorously explores themes of sexual liberation and societal norms through Alvin's escapades and misadventures. Supporting Blundell is a cast that includes Abigail, very, very short appearance, Lynette Curran and Jackie Weaver, she's got an interesting little part, under the direction of Tim Burstall. The film satirizes the sexual revolution of the era, poking fun at attitudes towards masculinity and femininity. Its candid portrayal of sex and humour. In short, it plays as a memorable piece of Australian cinema history. The film had a budget of $200,000. It was absolutely panned by critics, but it actually went on to earn $4.7 million in 1973, which is equivalent to, I think they were saying, about $47 million these days. So it's really amazing. And obviously the public didn't listen to the critics very much. And I think at that time, it would have been one of those movies in 73 that you could see a lot of couples in there from 19 to their mid-20s, maybe under 30, having a night out seeing that movie. It would have been pretty popular, I think. And I think it would have been one of those movies that would have been talked about. Tried to find some original kind of, reviews and that. And every time I typed in into Google, original 1973 reviews, Alvin Purple, it would just give me Alvin Purple reviews. So it was hard. I probably should have dug harder into Sydney Morning Herald archives or something like that. But I can tell you now, the critics hated the movie. And a lot of people, just reading through some of the IMDb reviews, etc., a lot of people don't like this movie as well. Yeah, what were your thoughts initially?
Well, in my notes here, and I'm going to say this right up, and that is, my first note is, Norgfest 55 seconds into the movie.
True.
So when you set up within the first minute of the film, that sets the premise, really.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Just starts off as a bit of a fantasy, like he's mind drifting. I think he's I was going to say a ladies' man, and then the reality. So when that kicks in, it's just what are we in for this? It's just in his own world. Some of it didn't really make sense to me. I know it's not meant to make sense. It's not the best movie script or the storyline in the world. And wasn't this the film that kind of started the whole revolution of Australian film in regards to, when the government decided to invest into the Australian film industry?
This was one of I don't think this one got the funding, but so the thing about this film, it was one of the first R-rated films released once they brought in the R certificate in 1970. One of the first, but definitely took advantage of that. So when you think about it, we had, I think, Tim Burstall's Stork was in 71, I think. We had Adventures of Barry Mackenzie in 72, and then this film in 73. So I think it was kind of around that era, and we had a lot of these sexploitation sort of Australian movies, and we had, what else did we had? We had Libido, which I think was another Tim Burstall film, or Tim Burstall. It was, I don't know if you've ever seen Libido. I only remember the ads. I've never seen it, and I don't think it's available anywhere. It's basically just like a 4-part, 4 separate stories, little anthology thing, but it's all based around sex and stuff like that.
Is that the ABC of?
No, that's different again. So that's completely different again. ABC of Love and Sex, or whatever it's called.
And Australia, and also
Australia After Dark. Yeah. So they were. What's the guy's name that made those? John Lamond. That's who it was.
John Lamond, that's it. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah. He did quite a few of these. He did this one. He did Australia After Dark. Felicity was one of his. He did Nightmares, which we did previously, and Nightmares is kind of like a Australian giallo movie with lots of sex and nudity. So there was definitely a time for this, and then I think another one they talk about. I don't know, on the DVD, on the Alvin DVD, there's a 43-minute or 45-minute promotional documentary called Inside Alvin Purple, which incidentally was directed by Brian Trenchard Smith. And they were saying that it was kind of like when they were talking about this movie, they were inspired by things like Libido, but also things like there was this movie called Bedroom Mazurka, which was massive in the 70s, early 70s, which was a foreign sex film, and it had the same sort of thing. It was like 3 or 4 different stories, like an anthology thing, and that was kind of a big thing as well. And they kind of sort of went off the back of that. So I think in the early 70s, is going back to what you were saying, I think we're in this whole period of not just the R certificate. We were about to go into the whole, government grants for films, things like that. But we also had this kind of like this sexual awakening in Australia, I think. The subject became less taboo and it ended up on the screen a lot more. So, and none of these movies are really, you definitely wouldn't consider them porn, and they're probably not even, you wouldn't even really think they're softcore porn, right? Then
No.
it's not Case of the Smiling Stiffs kind of stuff, and
it is gratuitous, no doubt.
yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it is that borderline of it's softcore porn, but then as soon as they add like a little comedic reference or something that a song that kind of resembles Benny Hill, and it's like, oh no, it's not a softcore porn, it's a comedy. So I feel like that kind of breaks the scene when you just hear this. So, yeah.
I think Tim Burstall said in this little documentary that, or in one of the interviews, there's also some interviews on the disc as well. And I think he was saying that he tried to put some sort of humor about every minute or so into the movie just to remind people that it's a comedy. So I think he kind of thought, okay, if we just have all the sex stuff and not many laughs, people are just going to think it's a sex movie.
That, or if they put in a boing type.
Especially in the second movie, which we'll get to, when they're getting that chase on the ferry, which is really strange sound effects. It's a funny movie. Like, there's a few things, right? Like, the movie is apparently, if you listen to Tim Burstall, a kind of like a play on the whole early 70s sex therapy thing, which was apparently a big deal. I don't remember. I was only 11. He sort of said, well, are sex clinics a new form of sex therapy, or are they just an old business of prostitution, like the old business of prostitution? And that, I think that comes out in the movie, right, where you've got this psychiatrist guy who is effectively making stag movies using Alvin Purple.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, so are you being a pornographer, or are you just being an absolute sleazebag?
I think the other thing about this movie that's interesting is, like, it's almost like Alvin Purple is abused in a way. If you were to look at it with a modern lens, he's being abused, like sexually abused by some women. Like, his teacher's wife sexually abuses him. He's always being chased by women, and it's really interesting. He kind of has this thing where if you take the movie, I know it's only a comedy and I know it's just a junky comedy, but if you kind of put a kind of a serious edge on the movie, it's only when he starts talking or having a relationship with, I've forgotten the character's name, but the one he ends up with near the end, Tina, that's it, where she is more about personality and more about real life connection rather than just a sexual connection. He obviously kind of can't help himself with all the other stuff going on around him.
No,
as well.
it is. They know, like, he reeks of, or his libido is just oozes, and Alvin's just completely, like, he is aware but unaware. Like, it doesn't affect him. He just thinks it's part of everyday life. And then when he's being approached by the sexual desires, really, and they do exploit him in a way, or sexploit him.
Hey, he's definitely exploited, and I'm probably not in a position to talk about this song. It's a very fine line. I'm not sure, though, that whether this movie is also a reflection of like the women's liberation movement of the time as well, where women are more empowered, seem more empowered. So in this movie, they seem quite empowered, and they're kind of almost the what's the word? I don't want to say stalkers. That's the wrong word, but they're kind of like they're the ones that are actually making the moves on him rather than the other way around. It's interesting, kind of look at it.
If the tables were turned, and it's like this is what women have to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, it's a bit like that. Maybe it's a bit of a take on that as well. I'm getting ready for all the hate mail I'm going to get from women that listen to this. Let me just start by saying I'm not qualified to talk about a lot of this stuff, so it's just off the top of my head. And if you don't agree, let me know. I'm happy to have the conversation. There's something about this movie. Somewhere I think it actually has a little bit more depth than it kind of appears to have. And I think when you look at it that way, it's quite an interesting film.
As the movie goes on, there are moments where it starts feeling a bit, where are they going with this? And not trying to ruin or spoil anything. It gets really dramatic, dark. Yeah, like it gets very heavy towards the main part, like, oh, yeah, fair enough. It goes from that big, what? Laughing, haha, and next thing you know, oh, we shouldn't be laughing at that.
Yeah, but anyway, it's a funny movie. I mean, I like the way early on in the movie he's trying all these different jobs, trying to get a job. It seems to continue on in the second movie a bit as well, and he's the one where he's the waterbed salesman is pretty hilarious.
And I just like the opening credits where you got the bed mattress bouncing up and down, and the first thing that I thought of was there is zero lumbar support. I'm going, wow, where's the mirror coil in that?
Yeah, it's really it's quite funny watching them all slosh around, and the scene where he's got the cowboy boots or whatever it is, and he pierces and he spurs and he pierces the waterbed. And I said to May, we were watching, I was like, hang on, there's more water there than would have been contained in that waterbed as well.
I think that might have been for a bit of comedic effect.
I think so, yeah. The car chases are good. It's got some interesting car chases. Like you said, it's very Benny Hill. I said to May, it's like if they played yakety sax in this, it would be, and just sped it up a little bit, it'd be just Benny Hill.
That's all it needs. And they've already applied the wacky sound effects with some parts as well, but it's just pure sex slapstick.
The other thing that was interesting to me is like I was looking at how the movie progressed, right? And I had this thought. We get to the scene where Alvin Purple gets basically used by his psychologist to make blue movies, and then they get caught out by this other psychologist he was originally seeing, who eventually wanted to sleep with him. She looked like she was fairly straight-laced, and he kind of refuses her advances, and then she decides to basically blackmail him because she knows what's going on. And they end up in this court scene, and the court scene's quite funny, and we go through this whole piece. And when he comes out of court and he's on the shoulders of these people because they've won the court case, et cetera, I was like, oh, okay, the movie's going to end. And then we got another 20 minutes to go. And I thought it felt really strange having like I guess I'd call it the husband chase tagged on to the end where all the husbands get together and chase him. I was like, I think this would have been better in the film itself, and the end of the film would have been him being chaired out of court winning. I mean, that would have been a logical end.
Like, and with the escapades that they get up to afterwards, it's like that they've gone, oh, we didn't spend all our budget. How do we get rid of it? Or how do we burn the cash off? And then next thing you know is they do what they do.
That whole piece with the chase and him being chased through Melbourne streets half naked or naked, and then that was after the skydiving bit and all this sort of stuff. And the skydiving bit, when he was going down in the parachute, I swear there was somebody, the sound effect was somebody in a microphone going,
yeah, well, they blew their budget in that scene, didn't they?
So they have that whole scene, and they could have quite easily have moved that whole piece somewhere else in the movie and then ended with the court scene. I don't know why they did that. Unfortunately, Tim Burstall's not here anymore. I'd love to know.
Another thing, it could be when they were putting it all together, and then they realised there was still a certain length short from a completed film, because it might have come in at just an hour long.
Yeah, maybe. But still, even when you filmed that part, doesn't someone, like you go out and film all that, doesn't someone look at it and go, well, it's not really a logical ending? I can't remember. What was the ending again? How did it end? He gets chased. He lands in the Yarra River, which must have been lovely for his health. And then, oh my God, I can't remember what happens at the end. Oh, does he go off with his
Tina? He
girl?
ends up finding Tina, who ends up at a sisterhood.
Oh my God, yes.
He ends up getting a job there.
And we're implying that the nuns, or whoever they are going to feast on him as well, right?
Well, I got the impression that because he ended up getting what he wanted to have at the start, and that was a job. And he ends up being a groundskeeper for the lands of the nunnery and the convent, yeah. And so, like, it's all about celibacy. So it's either that because Tina wasn't attracted to Alvin in that way.
Yeah.
Because she resisted Alvin's sexual, I guess, aura. So that's why he's going, no, I think that this place is good for me, like the job, because he can build everything. But then again, I never thought about the other way. Where
my mind's in the gutter straight away. And
yeah. So here I am thinking, he's found some peace.
Yeah, well, maybe he has. I'm sure that was probably the idea. But, I looked at it and I was like, oh, is this really the right place for him to be?
Both are plausible.
Yeah, both are plausible. Yeah, in a way, it's not a bad ending, to be truthful. I just thought the coming out of court thing was, maybe the coming out of court thing on the shoulders of people was too cliched to end on, because that's happened in thousands of movies, right? So
exactly.
Maybe,
It'll be that victory thing. Oh, yeah, fair enough, because it was quite a dramatic moment in the court.
Yeah.
And especially when they're playing the clips back and you're going, wow. Like, I actually felt very awkward. The clips as in the evidence. And gone, yeah, this is pretty rough. You had the judge played by Noel Ferrier. Yeah, he was good as a read between the lines sleazy judge.
Yeah, exactly. He was. And, yeah, I think it was those scenes, I actually think, when they were showing the stag movie, I call them stag movies because I'm sure they were talking about they were renting them out for $100 or $200 a time. And you could see them being played at stag parties. And if you don't know what a stag party is, it's kind of just like a men's party somewhere with lots of booze and, those sort of movies, or at like a Bucks night, that sort of thing, When I was watching that, I was kind of like, I actually did feel really sorry for the Alvin Purple character. I was like, yeah, he's really been exploited and used in a way that he wasn't expecting to.
Well, that's why when the evidence came out and he's going, oh, what? They were filmed, like he was completely unaware. And he was concerned over the feelings that Tina was having, and also the doctor, the psychiatrist, I can't remember her name either. My apologies. But, yeah, so it was like trying to balance it out and just prove his innocence, like he did this stuff. But he was under the ruling of the perverted doctor.
The other thing that's interesting about this film is when they cast the movie, there was a lot of pressure to cast somebody like, I think they talked about Jack Thompson quite a bit for the lead in this film. And Tim Burstall apparently pushed back quite hard on the whole thing. He was like, well, if we have somebody like Jack Thompson or a Jack Thompson kind of guy in this movie, men are going to hate him because he's just like, over the top, masculine, etc. So that's why he was always pushing to get a really average-looking guy. And Graham Blundell is that guy, I guess.
Yeah, well, because Jack Thompson was, of the time, the Gary Sweet.
He was. He was in Peterson, wasn't he, around that same time? Yeah.
Because Peterson came out a year later. So maybe when Alvin Purple was being made, it was prepping Jack Thompson to be Peterson, because it's by the same director.
Jack Thompson was also a Cleo pinup, I think.
Yes, I believe so. Wasn't he one of the first ones?
I think so. One of the first ones, like a naked pinup for Cleo magazine or something. Yeah. The music was good. I mean, I love the Alvin Purple theme. My little bit about Brian Cat, I always like talking about music where I can on these podcasts, mainly because I just like music. And
yeah, you got a rich history of music.
I do, and it's always good. Brian Cat was basically a pretty significant figure in the Australian music industry for, well, over 50 years now. He's a singer-songwriter, producer, plays keyboard, record label founder. So he founded Bootleg Records, I think they were called. He was involved in bands like The Group and Axiom and the Bootleg Family Band. And then he went solo in 72, all that sort of stuff. He even did a stint with the Flying Burrito Brothers in the US. So he's quite well known. Probably best known in Australia for songs like Ginger Man, Let It Go, Show Me the Way, and then, of course, Alvin Purple. And then I guess a lot of older Australians like myself remember his song for the TV series Class of 74, which was a big deal in the 70s. And then I also noticed when I was having a look at his profile that he actually only just as in 2 or 3 weeks ago, released a new single called You Know What to Say, and had a listen to that. It's pretty good as well. So he's kind of like rocky, bluesy kind of guy. Now I think he goes more towards country sort of stuff. I saw him, last time I saw him doing it in live, I'm sure it was back in about 2013, 2012. I was with my late wife. We were at a country music festival because she was loved country music up in the Hunter. And I'm pretty sure he was playing like a duo thing with Russell Morris at the time. And it was they were on very early in the day. It was quite good. So he's kind of been around for a long time. I listened to him a bit yesterday. Pretty good. Do you know much about him, or have you been exposed to him very much? I know you're a bit younger.
I did work at one of my previous jobs was working at a classic hits radio station.
Oh, you would have known him for sure.
His appearances on Rock Quiz and Spicks and Specs, and also still tours a lot. So, it is that whole generation of my generation, I should say, that are kind of tapping into the previous generations. And Brian Cat is part of that music generation. He's doing the rounds still.
He still is, and that's great. I love it. He must be, he was born in 1946. What does that make him? Oh, my math's terrible.
Quite young.
Well, he's almost 20 years.
He's 78.
78, yeah. So,
he'll be 78.
But, nothing like a good old muso at still doing it, which is great. There's plenty of us still out there doing stuff. So that's great.
Of course.
Keeps us young, I reckon. Keeps you young playing music as you get older. So.
Especially when you switch from beer to soda water.
Definitely.
That's that stage where you start going to, better start looking after myself a little bit.
Yeah, and you go from marijuana to multivitamins.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely changes anyway. So, yeah. So this movie, I don't know, in closing, I just think this movie is just a bit of fun. It's certainly not earth-shattering, but it is kind of if you go and dig a bit deeper into it, it actually says some interesting things. And on the surface, it's just sexploitation comedy, which is probably the best way to take it. There's a bit of meat there. Sounds like a double entendre. If you want to have a look, there's a bit there. So, was it good for you?
Yeah, it was leave the brain at the door. I had a beer while watching this, and since we last spoke, I've now since registered with Letterboxd, and I gave it 3 stars.
Okay, I think I gave it about the same.
Yeah, and I called it a pure, shameless Ozploitation Norgfest.
There you go. That's beautifully put.
Yeah.
It's all about the booze, baby. You did see there's one scene in the movie, I think, where you get to see his old fella for a split second, I think. I don't remember seeing it a lot.
No, there was there. I think he was wrestling with Chris McQuaid in the waterbed. Hold on, wait. Chris, she was the artist, the painting artist, but also the dominatrix. I think.
Maybe it was her. Yeah, it was one of them. And I think that's the only time that I remember seeing it in the movie. In any sort of thing, there's a bit of full frontal stuff from the ladies in the film, but it's nothing gratuitous really in this movie. It's just a bit of nudity.
But then again, it's like the first minute or so when they had Abigail, who at the time was the draw card to a lot of TV and film in Australia. Pretty much the Pamela Anderson of the 70s.
Oh, she was, wasn't she? Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then when you've got her wearing a revealing top on the tram in public, yeah, you knew that you were in for, males of a certain age were in for a bit of I won't say treat, but as in, yeah, this is what you're going to be in.
This is what you're going to be in for. Like, she was a massive draw card for these movies. She was in this movie. She was in the next movie. She shows a bit more in the next movie than she showed in this movie. She's also massive star in Number 96, right? Was this about the same time as? Oh, here we go. He's reaching for his.
I've got all 3 volumes of Number 96.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, which I know these are rare. See, I'm too young for the stuff that I'm interested in, so I've missed the generation.
You missed all that. I remember seeing that on TV. I think what year was Number 96? Was that 70s?
1974.
There you go.
No, I do apologise. 1972.
Okay, so yeah, I'm 10 years old, so I'm probably not allowed to watch it.
1972, and yeah, it's Abigail's front and centre in.
That was a pretty groundbreaking series, actually, wasn't it?
It was, yeah,
because it explored everything from homosexuality,
and then there was in regards to sexual abuse, and yeah, just it was very, very risqué.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, like it broke a lot of taboos.
It did. Yeah, it was pretty big. I just remember the thing I most remember is the explosion in the corner store.
Oh, the explosion in the corner store, yeah, downstairs where there was the bomb, yeah, which is in volume 3.
All right, so that was Alvin Purple. Now we're going to dive into Alvin Rides Again from 1974, which is, of course, the 1974 sequel that dives back into the misadventures of Alvin Purple, played again by Graham Blundell. This time he finds himself entangled in, even more absurd situations as he accidentally becomes involved with gangsters. This is really over the top, this one, while still being irresistibly attractive to women everywhere. So he encounters his double in this film, played by himself, and it leads to a series of mistaken identities and, chaos, right? We have Alan Finney as Spike, Abigail as the seductive May, Noel Ferrier again as Fingers, the gangster. And so the movie kind of capitalizes on the sex comedy formula, but also has the dual role gimmick, and I think makes it a little bit more of a standard comedy.
You know what it kind of reminded me of? It was lampooning, say, the James Bond type baddies. Yeah, with Fingers, all I think of was Goldfinger.
And what was the Noel Ferrier guy called?
The Hatchet.
The Hatchet or something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so you had those returning actors from the first film playing completely different characters.
I was going to say this. This is my first point. What the heck are Noel Ferrier and Penny Hackforth-Jones doing in this movie, playing completely different roles in the first film? I'm watching this scene where Penny Hackforth-Jones is in the cricket team. She's in the women's cricket team. She's like the den mother, I guess, for want of a bit of a term. And he's sitting right next to her. I'm like, don't you realize you're sitting next to your psychiatrist from the first movie? Who tried to ruin your life? What's going on? I'm like, why did we end up with these people back in the movie? And then Noel Ferrier, he was the judge in the first movie, and now he's Hatchet in this movie.
Yeah, well, it's bizarre. And the fact that Abigail is in it, but playing a different role from tram passenger to the assistant or the wife or the shop assistant to at the petrol station that Maury Fields runs. He is the mechanic. So yeah, that was so bizarre.
I didn't quite get it. I wasn't confused, but it's like I just don't understand what their reasoning. There's no on the DVD. I don't think there was any. There was a couple of interviews, I think, but there was there's no commentary on these. They're very bare. But I'm not sure why they ended up in here. I'm just thinking, was there any more that are in this film that were in the first film? There's probably a couple.
Well, there was actually no, I don't think there was, but there might have been people in the background or anything like that. In fact, I was going to mention too from first movie of Alvin Purple, I did notice, and I got it confirmed by comedian Tony Martin. Sorry to go back to this, but Shane Bourne was in it in the background.
Was.
Yeah, so when the waterbed sales inside the shopping centre. Yeah, so he's there having a smoke and smirking. And I was looking for him in Alvin Rides Again, just in case, since people were reoccurring in the
seeing if he was in it.
Yeah, but no, he wasn't. So
okay,
yeah,
it's an interesting film because we had a cameo from pre-Long Weekend, Briony Behetz, playing a taxi passenger early in the movie, and she was just there to do the usual Alvin Purple stuff.
Yeah, the nymphomaniac.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then we had in her second film Chantal Cantori, who was in the last movie we did on here, Snapshot, and then she went on to do Thirst and lots of other things as well. And her name in this movie is crazy. It's Boobs Latouche or something like that.
I know, right? It's so Austin Powers before it was Austin Powers.
Well, you know what? That's the vibe I got from her.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed watching Graham Blundell play two characters, which was kind of fun.
That was his doing because I believe that they didn't want to make a sequel. So this was kind of forced on them by the studios. And I believe that Graham had actually said that if you're going to do it, you need to do this and give me some more range just to show that I can do it. And that's why he ended up doing those two roles.
Some parts of it, there's a bit of a Weekend at Bernie's vibe.
Yes. I do have that in my notes too, that the magician scene. I go, yeah, that is very Weekend at Bernie's, and in the hotel room, yeah.
So it's basically the story is he kind of meets up. For some reason, he and his friend, forgotten his name, Spike, decide to head north. I thought they were heading to Queensland, but then I just assume everyone's in New South Wales within Victoria, so they're heading to New South Wales. And they decide to go on the road. They take off in this really crappy little car, which breaks down, and then that's where we see Abigail for the first time, and he has a dalliance with her while his car's being fixed out the back, and they end up at this casino. I don't know where this casino is. It's just like some casino in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, might have been in Canberra Casino. Maybe they're getting there halfway. Yeah,
yeah, and they end up with this character from the US who's scoping out. His name's Balls McGee. Another Alvin Purple kind of name for it.
Yeah, with his accent going in and out of Australian and American, and the only thing difference was like wearing the zoot suit and there's scarring on his face and something to kind of represent how gangster he was.
How gangster he is.
Yeah, with his floozies, yeah.
And Gus Mercurio's in this as well, who was like his offsider. Balls McGee's offsider. It's quite funny. Yeah, there's a little bit of the usual sort of slapstick stuff in here. There's the whole scene where the casino detective or whatever they call him, the casino police officer.
The house detective. Played by Frank Wilson. Yeah, he is just like, he could read between the lines. And that's when it goes all Weekend at Bernie's style.
It's so gross with he wants to see them together, and they've got Balls McGee's body in the bath with one of his girls, and she actually kisses him. I mean, obviously he's alive in the real thing, but we're supposed to know that he's dead, and it's like, ooh.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, that was a tad awkward. And he's like, oh, hello.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, it's quite funny. There's that. That's very much a Weekend at Bernie's thing. And then you mentioned the magician as well. That's a funny scene, actually.
Yeah. Can I mention that towards the opening credits of the film, I've noticed that when they had when it came up with Frank Thring, who plays Fingers, but it says courtesy of the Melbourne Theatre Company.
I noticed that as well.
Yeah. Going, wow, such prestige.
Yeah. And then, of course, and another point I need to make where I guess things are a bit different in those days is Ross Bova plays this dwarf in the movie.
Oh, yeah. He's not playing, and we're only going by what it's been labelled in the movie of its time. His character was and I looked up in the credits, he was called the dwarf.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. So we're not labelling him that. That's what
he was called.
Yeah, that's what he was called.
Seeing this as a movie of its time, there are short people jokes, mostly from Frank Thring. And once again, these days you wouldn't do it, right? But the 70s, it was just a thing. I think he's pretty funny, though. Am I wrong to say that? I think he's pretty funny. The way, especially when
they manipulate his voice. Yeah, well, that's manipulated. Like I'm pretty sure it's dubbed, or they got his voice and then they sped it up.
He's got some funny scenes, like when he double crosses Frank Thring in the safe, and he's in the safe at the end. And
that was totally random. I was, you got me.
then
played.
Again, we get the tag at the end where he's flying the plane that they're flying off in as well.
Oh yeah, it's so weird.
It is a weird movie.
When Alvin decided to escape up north, there was the moment where, because Alvin, the whole premise with Alvin Rides Again is that he's looking for a new job. So apparently the one at the groundskeeper, he kind of went through that. But when he gets the window washer role at the 2-story home and falls off it after the lady is just standing there starkers. But it's the new job as the office cleaner. When the office lady seduces him, I just could not stop looking at the office boss the next day when he walks in. The mutton chops on his face.
Oh my God, yes. And the comb over.
Yes.
And I was like,
I just could not. I felt like I nearly yelled at the TV going, comb your face or shave it. It was just, I've never seen so much mutton chop on his face.
I know. He walks in. I said to May, I said, look at the chops on this guy. And then I'm like, oh my God, he's got a really bad comb over as well. And I'm like, I can't remember the last time. It must be so out of fashion these days, thankfully. Like comb overs must be totally out of fashion these days. It's like,
sorry to kind of date it. It's like, a whole thing at the time of this recording when Godfrey's had gone into voluntary, the administration thing. And then you got the Mr. Hardy, who was the sales rep for Godfrey's with the comb over. Looked him up and he's still got it. He's 80 and he's still got the comb over.
Yeah. Oh, God.
So only because we're talking about comb overs.
Yeah, no, that's all right. Well, it's obviously from a different generation, right? And I'm getting a bit bald at the back and I'm like, I'm just going to let it go. Yeah.
I'm in my early 40s and I've lost it all. So
yeah, I'm just like, if it keeps going like this, I think eventually I'll end up shaving it all off. But it's all grown back since my chemo, which is kind of nice, but not all of it. But yeah, it was an interesting film. Like, well, one of the things, it was only rated M at the movies as well.
Well,
which was quite controversial.
Well, I think it was because they wanted to appeal to a younger audience. So while Alvin Purple was it made its mozza for an R-rated film, which is pretty impressive. But I think when they tried to make the sequel, the studios are going, we want to be, it's like Alvin Purple obviously would have been following in a whole bunch of younger kids were wanting to watch it, but they couldn't. So they got, all right, there's an audience there, let's tap into that. And that's why they went that way. But it just felt like the movie was being made up as it went.
Yeah, it was. So it had a $300,000, I think $300,000 budget. It only made about $1.8 million at the box office. So it in regards to the other one, didn't even do half of what the other one did. And, it just didn't perform as well. I think there's a quote here I'm reading from John Lamond, who actually worked on the film's release, saying he thought the filmmakers made a mistake making it less sexy because they didn't want to lose any potential audience. So the second one wasn't rated R and it fell on its ass after the first month, he said.
Well, if they didn't want to lose any of the potential audience, they should have just kept it as an R rating.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think half the attraction of an R rating is the fact that it's R, right? And you've got the usual problem with kids trying to sneak in and stuff like that, which is a whole part of the fun. We all did it. And, it probably would have done just as well.
It's the thrill of the chase to sneak into a movie which you don't have that these days anymore.
I was reading yesterday when they first proposed the R rating in Australia in 71 or 70 or whatever it was, that there was a heap of pushback from the cinemas themselves because they didn't want to be the ones that would have to enforce it.
Yeah.
In regards to having to go through all the trouble of making sure that they were checking ages and all this sort of stuff.
Because they lose revenue.
Well, that's exactly right. Yeah, yeah. Hey, what did you think of the cricket scene?
So random. Yeah, this is where it feels like they just were making it up. Yeah, bring in the group to write in the women into the movie to have a sexual escapade, but the fact that the team was losing, and then so Alvin and Spike dressed up in drag to do their thing, to play as the women and start winning the game, and also the very dated sledges from all the hecklers. Yeah, Terry Gill playing one of them, especially when the players were slapping the women on the butt. So it was like very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I thought that as well. It was a bit uncomfortable. And I thought for a minute, oh, well, the girls are going to come out and they're going to surprise them by being good at cricket, right? They obviously weren't, but it was a little bit mean-spirited, actually. And I'm like, why would a women's cricket team play a men's cricket team? And for starters, because my thinking was, okay, one of these women is going to hit the ball out, towards that group of men on the sideline heckling and hit one of them in the nuts or something like that. That sort of thing will happen, right? And the fact that Alvin and his mate, is it Spike? Is his name? Spike had to kind of dress up in drag to kind of save them because they put a bet on them. It was a bit rough. It was a bit demeaning, but that was the 70s.
Yeah, and I love the fact that sorry, I shouldn't say that. I don't love the fact. I found it amusing that the male cricket team were from Buffington RSL.
Yeah, we noticed that as well. It's like, oh, okay.
Oh, actually, did you notice though when Spike and Alvin were in the hotel and Alvin was, getting it on with one player at a time, and then Spike's like going, send some my way. And all the different door knocks that would just turn up, where especially with a cleaner and ladies of all different ages and sizes, especially with Esme Melville as well, the older lady, and then John Michael Housen as the bellboy.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's your cameo from your John Michael Housen. It's outrageous.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a bit rough too. Like I was like, oh, okay, so we're sending him through no fault of Alvin's apparently, but just the way the film's written, they're sending him like the gay guy, the old lady, and the overweight woman. Once again, doubt you'd see it today, but it's of its time, right? The other thing that's really interesting in this movie is right at the very end, there's like a little bit of gore. Right at the very end with Hatchet.
Oh, yeah. The movie ends up being like a bit of a action thriller type thing.
On Sydney Harbour.
Yeah, because it's so weird. It's like that they gave up on the boobs or they ran out of money for the budget. It's like, we've seen everyone's boobs, and so let's make boobs of ourselves and just run amok. It's like they got a creative license to, hey, we can film in Circular Quay. What the hell do we do?
Yeah, let's get on a ferry.
Wow, it was just so weird. But then again, I was speechless during that movie because I'm going, am I watching a really budgeted James Bond movie now?
Yeah, it was quite funny like that. It's, but like I said, I think it's less, even though there was still the sex stuff in there, it was less of a sex romp and more of a classic sort of comedy kind of thing, you know. But they still, because it was an Alvin Purple movie, like if you'd made this with some other character, they could have cut out all the sex stuff, added some extra scenes. It just would have been a comedy.
Yeah. Well, when Alvin, Spike, and Boobs, the character, not I'm just saying,
Boobs Latouche.
yes. When they escape and then Alvin and Boobs take a romantic stroll, then suddenly ends up with Balls' funeral, right? And then next thing you know, the hearse with the machine gun, and they give chase and they're going, where's this going? It just suddenly ends up being like a full-on car chase.
It was so weird. I was like, what the fuck is going on? And the guy who was chasing him in the car, I hardly understood a word he said when he was talking to them. And there's no subtitles on the DVDs, so you couldn't really get into it that way. But he had this car that had like machine gun at the front and then these 2 rocket launchers. And like you said, it's almost like a James Bond film.
Yeah, just shooting anything and everything with one eye patch. And so his depth perception is completely off. No wonder why he was missing him. But,
that's right. And
yeah,
he killed a guy in a crane.
Yeah, which ends up killing him.
And then he kills. I don't know if he kills him. There was that rental truck that blew up when he shot it, and it's like, okay, this is interesting. This isn't Alvin Purple, but anyway.
So if you're after nakedness and sex scenes, pretty much the last one that you see is just before the big shoot 'em up.
Yeah, because he's in with Boobs Latouche. I love saying that name.
Yeah. The Boobs Latouche.
Boobs Latouche. Is it touche? Because the way it's written, it's Touche, which I thought was touche. But
yeah, it's written like that, but they pronounce it as Boobs Latouche.
Boobs Latouche. Yeah.
So,
and it is. It's very Austin Powers, right?
Yeah.
A lot of vagina.
Yeah. It's just... it's just so weird. And then when those action scenes are happening, I'm thinking it's like Casino Royale, the David Niven version, and Peter Sellers. And with that going on, and then when they end up on the ferry, they end up escaping to the airport and flying to Sydney, which magically they just end up at Circular Quay. And but the fact that Boobs ends up killing all the baddies with with whatever, and then they're all going, "Oh, well done, you have learned." It's like why to demean? It's like you have. I see you have learned. You know your judo well type.
Oh my
thing.
God! Yeah, it's so strange. Like she shoots the first guy, and he says something like, "I wasn't expecting that," or something like that, or whatever it was.
Well done.
Yeah,
Bravo.
and then she stabs the second guy, and he says a few things the same way, and then she puts a hatchet in Noel Ferrier's head, which is like where I said the gore comes. Well, that's pre-Friday the 13th even.
Yeah.
So, it's groundbreaking, right?
And he does like a Shakespeare-esque type line at the end. Yeah. I love the special effects with it where it's literally red paint because that blood is just way too
it's really
thick
deep red
and bright.
It's very red. But yeah, so it's an interesting movie. We get another little bit from Brian Cadd in this movie. He sings. There's just before the scene with the magician. There's a scene with his band. I think it's the Bootleg Family Band at the time, doing this gig, and I was like, geez, they cleared that stage so quick because they finished playing and then the magician's on stage right where the drummer was set up.
But that's legit. Because you play in the odd band, and
oh yeah,
it's like you click your fingers.
Just click your fingers, it's all gone. That's it. It's very quick, and that stage is so small. That poor drummer.
Oh.
It's like, and he was. I think he's a real drummer. He was kind of overplaying his sort of hand movements. He was probably told by the director to make it look more like he was doing something. But it was quite funny. But, you know, it was a good movie. It was funny. And I don't know, I was kind of thinking, out of the two movies, did you have a preference for one over the other?
Yeah, well, I would say that with Alvin Rides Again, and I'll put this on my letterboxd as well, I gave it 1.5. Like, I tried my absolute best. I only pushed through it because we had to I had to review it for the podcast, and my comment for it was, Jesus, this sequel made no sense. And I'm really open to accepting that. It's like with Barry McKenzie Holds His Own, type, where it goes into like a whole vampire type thing. I'm always open for a completely different direction or anything like this, but I really struggled with Alvin Rides Again.
I kind of didn't mind it. When I first finished watching it, I was like, did I actually enjoy that? And then I was like, when I was reflecting on it, I was like, I enjoyed it, but I enjoyed it like I would enjoy, I don't know, a piece of chocolate, and then it's gone and you forget all about it. Whereas Alvin Purple's probably a little bit more, God, can you even say Alvin Purple's thought-provoking? I guess it is in a way. I know it sounds like I'm building these two up too much, but the main reason, and I'll tell you the truth, the other reason I decided to do both of these was because I'm like, I can't fill up an hour talking about Alvin Purple.
I don't blame you.
All right. So, Matt, let me know where people can find you, and let listeners know where people can find you, what you're up to, and all your socials if you want.
Sure. Well, my stuff is My Geek Culture, the Australian type pop culture website. So if you look up mygeekculture.com.au, and also it's available on YouTube. So I've got some stuff which I'm filming, and I've got another podcast coming up based on that, which is not borrowing. It has elements of this podcast in it. So it's like an extended universe, I should say. So it's something which you may be interested in as well.
Not like a multiverse.
Yeah, multiverse, yeah. An Aussieverse.
An Aussieverse. There you go. There's a new one.
Ausploityverse.
Ausploityverse.
So that's coming soon. And as well as I do the Champagne Comedy podcast, which is myself and my co-hosts review the catalogue of the Working Dog comedy team. Yeah, and you look at that up on any podcast platform, Champagne Comedy Podcast. And, yeah, I'm just floating around on socials as well. I'm very active on Twitter, at Matt Fulton, .com.au, and Facebook. And, yeah, and my website is mattfulton.com.au.
Excellent, excellent. So you're one of the people like me still calls it Twitter.
Yeah,
Can't bring myself to call it
else.
X. Yeah,
but I'm also on Blue Sky. Yeah, I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Letterboxd as well.
Yep.
So ever since you mentioned that, I went, I better make the effort. So I'm on
Letterboxd is so good.
mattfulton.com.au on Letterboxd. Goodness gracious, what other socials? Instagram, Mastodon, Threads.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's always a pleasure having you on and having a good chat with you about all these weird Australian films. And these two were definitely that. When we come back, we'll talk about what's coming up next.
And now, preview time. When it comes to entertainment, you can't beat a good film. So let's take a look at what's coming your way.
The following is based on true events.
Can you interpret dreams?
Sometimes. How do you feel when you wake up from these dreams?
They scare me a bit.
For Alice Palmer, underneath the hopes of a bright future were suspicions
I feel like something bad is going to happen to me.
that death was near.
You scared of dying?
Yeah, of course I'm scared of dying.
That was the last time that I saw her. I kept hearing noises in the hallway.
It hasn't reached me yet, but it's on its way. I feel like I can't do anything.
I think Ellie saw a ghost. I didn't have any rational explanation for who was in those photos.
Something was happening inside that house and I wanted to find out what it was.
There was a ghost in our house.
Lake Mungo.
Yeah, of course I'm scared of dying. Isn't everyone scared of dying?
Next on A Dingo Ate My Movie, we dive into Lake Mungo. Get ready for a haunting journey through this Aussie cult classic. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode. Thank you to all my guests who give their time to make this podcast possible, and a special thanks to you for listening. Don't forget you can follow A Dingo Ate My Movie on social media. We're at Dingo Movie on Twitter, Dingo Movie Pod on Facebook and Instagram, and we're on the web at dingomoviepod.com. If you'd like to support the show, leave us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts, or share the show with your friends. Of course, you can always buy me a coffee over at buymeacoffee.com/dingomoviepod. Once again, thanks for listening, stay safe, and I'll see you on the next episode of A Dingo Ate My Movie.